Okay, before Michael, Becca, before we start with this interview, we're starting with this interview right now. In my closet, in my oh, I'm sorry. In my closet, Mike just fell. In my closet, I have the paperback novel of Raymond Chandler's The Long Goodbye. I always tell people that I'm a noir fan and hard-boiled fan, but I'm also a total faker. So I wanted to know, because I haven't read that novel, is it more than a hard-boiled book, or is there a lot more layers within Chandler's world that I should actually, after this interview, go pick up the book and start reading?
Yeah, so that comes from an authentic place for me as the screenwriter. There was a time in my life where I read that book once a year. I when I was studying fiction and screenwriting at Columbia University, where I kind of started with everything. Um, an instructor came to me when I was writing noirish or stories, and he said you need to read Raymond Chandler. And I don't know if I started with The Long Goodbye, but that it became my favorite. It's just like Zach, played by Avi in the movie, mentions. It's a very deep exploration of the self by I think a tortured, brilliant mind and an alcoholic as well.
Rebecca, from your vantage point, one would say, I guess if you're just watching something and it's walk and talk, a lot of monologues, a lot of exposition, I guess if you're a viewer and don't peel under the layers, it would seem like a really nice escapist fare about two people who bond within the confines of the city. But for
Mhm.
you as an actor, it just seems so ambitious, because not only are you walking and talking, you are really delivering, both of you guys are delivering so much dialogue. It would just seem to me to be a very, was this a very deceptively ambitious undertaking for everyone involved?
I don't know if it was deceptive. I think that we were all well aware of it being ambitious. Yeah, I mean, it was, even a lot of people talk about how hard like lots of dialogue is, but I think even more so than that is just the physicality of having to be walking and talking and organic movements and keeping your energy up for that long. It's also very like physically taxing, especially at the hours that we were shooting at, which was in the middle of the night. The film takes place in the middle of the night and we shot in the middle of the night. So
Doing 3 or 4 takes of the long
and doing
conversations.
Yeah, so not only doing that wasn't the first take, those are just the best takes, right? So it we knew what we were signing up for, and for some reason we did it anyway. But watching it back now, I think we're all pretty much like, wow, I really said all that, and I said it well.
There's so much content out there, whether it's a really tentpole film or it's an indie film. But for me, something like TheSleepless, where even amidst all this technology of your character talks about online dating and whatnot a little bit, very, very quickly. But I still feel that the idea of two people meeting each other outside of a bodega and throwing caution to the wind and deciding to bond, e- even to this day, seems very revolutionary. Can you guys, I guess, speak to that? Even though it's a simple story, I think within, the idea of with Netflix and streaming and technology, these are in many ways barriers to actually people, no matter where, if you're in a city or no matter what part of the world you live. These are barriers that it's hard for people to meet these days. I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. It was definitely intentional um, to allow coincidence a bit of a voice here in a good way, not in a way that magically makes the plot work, which can sometimes happen. But also, like I increasingly in the projects that we work on and in the stories that I'm seeking to tell, there is a goal to at least put forth the idea that people can, when they feel safe to do so, they can take a chance on each other. and see where it goes at least. And I think we put some work into this, but I think Zach and Sophia, like when they meet, it you know, there's no magic. It's just reality. Like they just run into each other, and there's awkwardness and there's a little bit of guardedness, but very slowly, like even at like a couple of different levels, as they kind of walk and talk and get to know each other, different levels of letting one gate down, letting another gate down, and I think, you know, there is a degree of an intentionality to that, because like insomnia, like our daily lives can get really lonely and isolating, and we wanted to put forth a what if in terms of something that's got a little bit more alchemy going on than algorithm, I guess.
Yeah, I guess in layman's terms, what is the key to keeping quote unquote the city that never sleeps a city that sleeps? Meaning your movie in many cases seems very, very quiet and subtle. And it would seem to me, just as an outsider, to shoot within the city would be a very hard undertaking, no matter what kind of production you have behind you. So,
Yeah, I mean, the it was shot in the city, and there are these just like little pockets and places of New York that aren't often represented on screen, where you can find some peace and solitude. We are, you know, I say we because I'm a New Yorker, but, you know, we're often represented as the city that never sleeps and the hustle and bustle. And maybe I'm just used to the noise, but I know that I myself have found myself in these situations where it's like, oh, I just stumbled upon this little like cobblestone street, or, you know, where nobody's really around here, and it's kind of nice and peaceful. And, you know, you'll have as there were in our film, just sort of like, you know, 2 a.m. stragglers, like people coming home from a bar or stuff like that. But, you know, if you keep the intimacy of what's going on between these two characters, all of that just kind of gets shut out.
Yeah, and we also we shot, you know, at 2-4 in the morning, where you know,
there were certainly still people out, but
Yeah.
just not as many as there normally would be. And, you know, even when we were shooting in Prospect Park, there were people that were riding bikes, and, you know, there was like noise, like people started to wake up as we started to wrap.
no, this is just a tangent, off on a tangent kind of question, but you know, I'm a huge cinephile, and for years I've been meaning to get to the work of Cassavetes behind the camera, not as far as him as an actor. And I'm just wondering, for both of you, do you think what are some of the lessons we can still take from watching his films as far as the way it pertains to storytelling, relationships? Do they still resonate with both of you today? His work behind the camera.
Yeah, he's the best, man. Like he's what I think he did was to either affirm or reaffirm that, like, if you're making an authentic, sincere, deep effort at storytelling, at human relationships, which every great film, all the way up onto the blockbusters, like that's what it's about. That's what really matters. Like, especially those first few, which I think are the ones that I've studied the most. Like it's just it can be that simple. I mean, not that it's so simple to execute, and it doesn't take a large amount of work to successfully tell a story in those terms. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, I'm self-taught, so like, you know, studying the filmmakers who did movies that might be a little bit similar to ours in ways in like the 90s, they're talking about him, about how he inspired them, and so that's how I got there. But yeah, I think that's a really keen observation.
Without giving too much away regarding the ending, I really appreciated I'm just going to say the emotional release within, I guess, the final act. I'm not going to talk about the aesthetic stuff, but can you just talk about the use of that wonderful song within a lot of just, I guess, aesthetic changes, which we're not going to talk about, but would love
Yeah,
to hear
thank you.
those kind of creative
Yeah.
choices. I thought that was a very, really, a lot after all of those, like you said, those gates and those little mini battles and the challenges, which are really necessary in getting people getting to know each other. I think it's a very real movie. Can you guys talk about that, those final moments, especially with that song? Really well done. So.
Yeah, I would love to talk about the song. I'm so happy
Yeah.
about the song. So the song was commissioned by we commissioned the song from our good friend Mike O'Malley, who's just a really brilliant, down to earth,
Super talented
like
guy.
really talented, like singer songwriter. Has been in a couple of bands as well. Collaborates in other ways. But he was in our first feature, where he played a song, and we've kept in touch with him. We're big fans of his work. And when the script, almost like right after I finished the script and knew we were going to make the movie, I reached out to him that early, and I said, "Hey, I want you to write a song for the end of the movie. I'll give you the script, do whatever you want, and here's what I can afford." And he was like, amazing. And like, it was that simple. There was just no doubt that whatever he was going to come back with, just based on our knowledge of his work and the overlap between what he does and what we do. I just knew we were going to get something great. And the first time I heard the scratch track before it was even done, I was like, oh, that's perfect. And the advantage of doing that early as well was that when we did get around to planning out the photography and the blocking and the camera work for the last few moments of the movie, we had some time to plan that out and think about how it would sync and how it would proceed. And I can't tell if it's just me because of like how I feel about the film as a whole, as the person who made it, and thinking about how grateful I am to all the people that work together to help us make it. But when we get to that point in the movie with the song and what's going on, it's happening a little bit right now.
I cry every time.
I get a little emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go from the emotional to a very facetious ending. Oh, a couple of last questions. Is there any good thing about insomnia? There's a lot of coffee drinking here. Maybe you'll be exposed to more different kinds of coffee. Maybe I'm thinking maybe you might at 2:30 in the morning you might get some work done that you needed to get done. And number three, I guess you get to meet people that maybe you wouldn't otherwise meet. So I'm not saying you guys are advocates for not good health, but are there any kind of positives to take from insomnia? So.
I think it's what you do with the time, right? And it's the beginning of the film, so it's not giving too much away. In the beginning, you just see them like doing what anybody would do, which is to watch some TV. She does a little yoga. They're trying to like get back to sleep and just focusing on getting back to sleep. And then once you make that decision that like, I'm not even going to try anymore, like what happens then? Right. And it doesn't mean you have to go to a bodega and meet some guy. It doesn't mean that you even have to leave your home, but those can be points at which you reflect and maybe get to know yourself a little bit more. And I think that that's something that does happen in the film. They get to know each other, but they also get to know themselves a bit more too.
My final question to both of you is, after the viewer watches this movie and maybe he or she will be really inspired to maybe see another film, either of this ilk or that would take them to maybe a similar terrain. Is there a movie that both of you can recommend to the listeners of our podcast or just in general?
I mean, definitely the before sunrise, before sunset, and before midnight is the last one film.
Especially the first one that is a big influence. And we have another feature that has a lot of long monologues about some sensitive subjects. It's called the Video Blogs. It's also on Prime, but you don't have to watch that. You can, but
sure, the Video Blogs on Prime.
Okay, and very quickly, what makes your collaboration together work? What is it? What is the key to that bond?
I mean, probably the same things that make our marriage work. Communication, over communication, boundaries, just sort of like knowing when to kind of put the film aside and talk to the person.
Yeah, trust.
Help, support.
Thank you guys so much for your time. Really enjoyed your film.
Thank you
Thanks so
so
much.
much.
We appreciate it.
Take care.
Have a good
Bye
day.
bye.